for day 5, I wanted to talk about my top 5 romantic tropes. When I started thinking about a video about my favorite tropes in books, I tried to go beyond romantic tropes, but it turns out that some of my favorite just happen to be romantic tropes, so I just decided to stay in that realm for this video. I'll talk about other tropes I like or dislike maybe in the future, but for today, it is my top 5 romance tropes. And so these are my favorite ways that couples get together in books. And I have an example, 1 or 2 examples of each one. I'm going to preface this by saying that when it comes to romantic tropes for me, I don't have any romantic tropes that I necessarily hate. I mean, there is maybe like a couple, but for the most part, I don't mind any romantic tropes as long as the relationship that is happening in the book seems like a natural relationship. All of these tropes could also be really badly done, so they have to be done in something that feels like these people could actually like each other, have chemistry, or be falling in love. So that is like my little stipulation that all these could go wrong, but when they are done right, I really love them. And my first one is the hate to love trope, which I'm sure everybody understands this. People that start out at the beginning of the book not liking each other or really hating each other, and by the end they have grown to love each other or care for each other a lot. And the example of this that I read this year that I really enjoyed was Alex Approximately by Jenn Bennett. And this is a story about a girl who moves out to California, and before she had moved out there, she had started a internet relationship with a boy named Alex, and Alex is from California. So when she moves out to California, she thinks that she will meet him in real life, but isn't quite sure how that's gonna go. So she moves to California, she gets a job, and at her job she meets a boy who she doesn't really get along with. They grind on each other's nerves right away, but they are stuck working together. And of course, as time goes on, we get the hate to love experience between those two, and her internet boyfriend kind of takes place in that relationship between her and the boy she doesn't like. So I'm not going to give it all away. You can read the synopsis if you want to get a little more. I think the synopsis gives away too much. So if you know you enjoy a hate to love trope, I would recommend Alex Approximately. The next one that I love is Mistaken Identity, and often this happens in fantasy books, I feel like. So when somebody is actually royalty and they're trying to disguise it, or just introducing as somebody else, and then we find out later that that person isn't who you thought they were. And so I don't know why I love this, especially love it in fantasy books. So the one I'm going to give you is example. Well, the two I'm going to give you examples are fantasy books, and they are both middle grade fantasy books. And the first one is Fairest by Gail, Carson, Levine. And this is about a girl who grew up in a poor family. They are innkeepers, but she gets kind of swept into the castle life one day. The queen of this kingdom decides that she's going to make this woman who was of common birth into a noble woman to be her lady in waiting. And so she's going around like she's a noble woman, even though that's not how she grew up. And she meets the prince. They kind of develop a relationship with him, thinking that she has grown up as a noble woman the whole time. I don't think this actually is the best example, because I don't really like the way the prince reacts when he finds out. But if I wanted a better example, I didn't read this year, but one of my favorite books of all time is A Book of 1,000 Days by Shannon, Hale. And this one, I love the mistaken identity in this one. It's another one where a common woman, she is actually the maid for a princess, and she might not be a princess, but she's a noble woman, and she's the maid of it, and Dashti, the maid, switches places with the noblewoman at the noblewoman's request because she's afraid for her life, so she asks her maid to become basically her. And so she develops a relationship with the Khan, because this takes place in kind of like a Mongolian inspired country. So she becomes friends with the Khan, who thinks that she is of noble birth. So it's another one of those things of like a commoner pretending to be noble, blah blah. But I like the way that one kind of plays out better than in Fairest. So both of them are good, but it just happens to be a better example. The third one that I love is fake dating. I think this is a pretty popular trope. I especially love this in movies, but in terms of books, one of the classic and one that I read this year is To All the Boys I Loved Before, where Laura Jean decides to have a fake relationship with Peter Kavinsky in order to like have other people not know that she sent them love letters and that she is in a relationship, so that other people won't think that she is in love with them anymore. I'm sure a lot of people know this plot because it became a movie this year, and I do like the fake dating trope in this movie, or in that book and in the movie. But another one that I really love is The Fillin Boyfriend by Kasie West. I really enjoy the way the fake dating is done in this one, and that one, this girl, she at the very beginning is supposed to be going to prom with her boyfriend who lives out of town, and he dumps her right before the prom, and so she just picks a guy in the like parking lot to become her boyfriend, so that her friends still think she has this boyfriend, and so then they kind of like have a fake dating trope of this being the boy that she was dating when she just met him. And I love that book, so that is another example of the fake dating trope. The fourth one is the parent trap trope, which kind of I don't know if I made that name up, but that's what it is, like where you kind of have two people that maybe don't get along and they are stranded in a place, and so they are forced to connect, like the movie Parent Trap. And the example of this one that I really loved this year was Starry Eyes by Jenn Bennett, and this is about two young people that they used to be really close friends, but then they had a falling out and they haven't talked for a few years, and then they are suddenly like put together at a camping trip and everybody else deserts them, so they are alone in the wilderness and have to get back to civilization, and obviously have to kind of get over some of their differences. And I really enjoyed that book. I thought that the way they did the relationship was really excellent and had kind of their history, but then also kind of like where they're at now. And the last one that is one of my favorite is The Boy Next Door. And everybody knows this one, where you fall in love with the person that's been in your life the whole time, right next door. And I did not actually read any books with this trope this year in 2018, so I can't give you any current examples that I read, but my favorite for this one is On the Fence by Kasie West, and it's about a girl who has several brothers, and then she also has the boy next door who is kind of like one of her brothers, and so she's surrounded by boys in her life, and at this point, now that she's a teenager, she starts to develop feelings for this boy next door, and how that kind of happens with her being kind of more of the tomboy, and everybody kind of thinks of her as one of the boys, all that. And I just love that book. If you have any other examples of books you loved that have these romantic tropes, I always love to read more of them, so put them down in the comments, and I hope you're enjoying your 12 Days of Christmas. Bye!